Earth was unrecognizable. Cities that once bustled with life now stood silent, reduced to twisted metal, crumbling stone, and broken glass. The sky, once clear, hung heavy with the smoke of 1,000 burning fires, a grim testament to the devastation that had swept across the planet. Bodies littered the streets, civilians, soldiers, all fallen in a futile attempt to stop the onslaught. Above them, like silent wraiths, hovered the Void Reapers. The Reapers were precision incarnate, ruthless and efficient. They had come from the void, their purpose clear from the beginning, humanity's complete eradication. Their methods were cold, calculated. They would strike without warning, their sleek, black figures invisible to most sensors, leaving death in their wake. They didn't just kill, they erased. Cities vanished overnight, their inhabitants never knowing what hit them. In the beginning, humans had fought back. Armies were raised, weapons deployed, strategies formed. But nothing worked. No tactic could outmaneuver the Reapers' overwhelming technological superiority. They used stealth, appearing out of nowhere, and their attacks were surgical. Within minutes, entire platoons would be obliterated, buildings turned to ash. Every defense, every desperate stand humanity mounted, crumbled. The Reapers knew no mercy, no hesitation. Their aim was not just to conquer but to annihilate. This was more than war, it was extermination. The cleansing of a species deemed too chaotic, too unpredictable for the cosmic order the Reapers upheld. In the ruins of a once thriving metropolis, a group of survivors huddled in the shadows. They were the last of the resistance, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow with the knowledge that their efforts were meaningless. Every skirmish ended the same, with the death of more humans and the relentless march of the Reapers closer to victory. The numbers had dwindled to near extinction. Hope was a distant memory. But not all was forgotten. In whispers, in the darkest corners of underground bunkers, legends stirred. Tales of beings from humanity's most ancient fears, the Boogeymen. They were creatures of nightmare, said to emerge only when humanity faced its greatest threats, protecting the weak by bringing terror to those who would harm them. Myths, perhaps. But myths were all that remained. In one hidden bunker, far below the ruins, the last remnants of Earth's leadership huddled. Scientists, military commanders, and occult scholars, all sworn to secrecy about the Nightmare Protocol. The Boogeymen were not just tales for frightened children. They were real, and there had been a plan to call them forth, should the worst ever happen. The air in the underground bunker was thick with tension. Around a steel table, a group of survivors stood silent, each person weighed down by the grim knowledge of what they were about to attempt. Scientists, with trembling hands, recalibrated machines that shouldn't exist by conventional science. To their side, occult scholars muttered incantations under their breath, fingers tracing symbols drawn in blood across the cold metal floor. This was the Nightmare Protocol, a desperate fusion of human ingenuity and ancient fear. The leader of the group, a woman with weary eyes, gave a nod. No speeches. No rallying cry. Just the acknowledgement that they were about to cross a line no one had dared to cross before. The room lit up as the machinery came to life, screens flickering with arcane symbols alongside modern code. Years ago, when the Reapers first arrived, humanity had considered every possibility, every weapon, every defense. And when all seemed lost, they had turned to the legends. The Boogeymen. The Boogeymen were not born in laboratories, nor were they creatures of myth alone. They had always existed, a manifestation of humanity's darkest fears. But they had been dormant, locked away by time and disbelief. The protocol was designed to call them forth again, using technology to bridge the gap between nightmare and reality. With the right blend of science and ritual, fear itself could be weaponized. Ancient relics were placed in precise formations around the room, a rusted blade said to have slain a monster in the shadows, the charred remains of an old grimoire, and vials of dark liquid whose origin no one dared question. Beside them, devices hummed, blending electromagnetic waves with frequencies only the subconscious could understand. This was not just summoning, it was the deliberate crafting of terror into form. The ritual began, the room dimming as the temperature plummeted. Soft chanting filled the air, the words unintelligible, but their meaning hung heavy. The energy in the room shifted, something ancient stirring. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in, the air tightening. The scientists exchanged nervous glances. They had designed the machines, but none truly understood what they were unleashing. Then, the first crack. A sound like glass breaking, but it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. A faint whisper echoed, growing louder, more insistent. Shadows began to shift unnaturally, bending and warping in ways that defied logic. And then, they appeared. The boogeymen were not what anyone expected. There was no heroic figure stepping from the darkness, no noble protector. They were hulking, grotesque figures, their bodies twisted and malformed. Faces, if they could be called that, were obscured by writhing darkness, their forms constantly shifting, as if reality itself couldn't decide what they should be. They radiated an aura of primal fear so thick that even the humans who had summoned them could feel it, their hearts racing, hands shaking. For a moment it was unclear if the summoners were the boogeymen's next prey. But the creatures did not strike. They hovered, waiting, as though sensing their true target. The Void Reapers. The scientists stared in awe and horror at what they had created. These weren't beings of reason or morality. They were manifestations of pure, unfiltered terror, drawn from the deepest recesses of the human mind. And their purpose was singular: to hunt, to eliminate. The question lingered in the air: could they control what they had summoned? One of the boogeymen shifted toward the room's entrance, its form blurring and then snapping into sharp focus, a jagged, toothy grin spreading across what could be a mouth. Another let out a low, guttural growl, the sound so deep it vibrated in the bones. For a split second, the humans feared the creatures would turn on them. Instead, the boogeymen melted into the shadows, dissolving into the very fabric of the room. The Reapers were coming. And now, so were they. The team stood frozen, trying to shake off the lingering dread. The ritual had worked, but at what cost? The boogeymen were loose, and while they would fight the Reapers, no one could deny the overwhelming feeling of unease. The real terror wasn't just what they would do to the Reapers, it was the creeping understanding that, once unleashed, the boogeymen might never be contained. The Void Reapers moved in perfect formation, their movement silent, their presence undetectable to any human technology. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, masters of stealth, death in the form of sleek, obsidian armor. For as long as they had existed, they had known nothing but success. Every world they touched fell, every species they encountered was erased. There was no hesitation, no fear among them. The Reapers approached the last human stronghold with the same cold confidence they had on every other planet they had conquered. They believed themselves unseen, unaware that something far darker now stalked them. The boogeymen didn't approach. They simply were. One moment the Reapers advanced, the next, the air itself seemed to shift. The night grew thicker, deeper, and with it came a strange sensation, a crawling unease that the Reapers, who had never known fear, couldn't comprehend. It was subtle at first, like a shadow moving just out of the corner of their vision. Then, everything changed. Suddenly, one of the Reapers faltered, its steps slowing as its vision blurred. What had been the clear, quiet landscape of a destroyed Earth now twisted before its eyes. The sky darkened further, shapes began to form in the periphery, whispering sounds filled the air, unintelligible, but deeply unsettling. The Reaper tried to recalibrate, thinking its sensors were malfunctioning. But it wasn't malfunction. It was fear, and it was spreading. Without warning, one of the boogeymen struck. It came from the shadows, a grotesque, half-formed figure that flickered between worlds. Its claws found purchase in the first Reaper, tearing through its armor as if it were paper. There was no time to react, no time to warn the others. The Reaper collapsed, its once pristine form now a mangled heap, black ichor leaking from its body. The others didn't see the attacker, only the aftermath. And then the hallucinations began. One by one, they experienced something alien to their existence: terror. their once perfect senses were now deceiving them. Some saw their comrades morph into monstrous creatures, their forms twisting grotesquely. Others heard voices, taunting, mocking, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Reapers' greatest strength, their unshakable focus, was now their greatest weakness. They couldn't trust their own eyes, their own thoughts. Panic set in, and it spread like wildfire. The boogeymen thrived in this chaos. For the first time, the Reapers felt the weight of being prey. The boogeymen moved in absolute silence, their forms warping reality around them. To the Reapers, the world had become a nightmare. Some turned on each other, attacking what they perceived to be threats. Others stood frozen, overwhelmed by the hallucinations and voices in their heads. One by one, they fell. The Reapers' technology, once flawless, was now useless. Their weapons misfired, unable to target the shifting, intangible figures of the boogeymen. Communication systems failed as distorted voices screamed through their channels, rendering orders impossible. Every tactic the Reapers had perfected over millennia was worthless against an enemy that didn't follow the rules of reality. The boogeymen weren't bound by physical laws, they were manifestations of terror itself, and in their presence, logic unraveled. As the battle unfolded, the Reapers realized they were outmatched in a way they had never been before. It wasn't just the boogeymen's speed or strength, it was the pure, primal fear they instilled. The Reapers had never encountered anything like it. For the first time in their existence, they couldn't rely on their own minds. And in that confusion, the boogeymen picked them off one by one. The final Reaper, disoriented and desperate, tried to retreat, but it was too late. A boogeyman appeared behind it, a formless shadow that materialized into a grotesque creature. The Reaper raised its weapon, but it was futile. With one swift motion, the boogeyman tore through it, silencing the last of the invaders. Silence fell over the battlefield, but it was a different kind of silence now. The Reapers, once the universe's perfect killers, had been utterly destroyed. No survivors. No retreat. Just the mangled remnants of what had once been an unstoppable force. The boogeymen faded back into the shadows, leaving behind only destruction and a new reality. For the first time, the hunters had known fear. The Void Reapers had never experienced loss on such a scale. In their cold, calculated existence, failure was not a concept they were familiar with. But now, they were forced to face the unimaginable, their elite assassins slaughtered by an enemy they hadn't even seen coming. The aftermath of their defeat rippled through their ranks, but their response was swift. Fear might cripple other species, but not them. They were designed to adapt, to evolve, and to overcome. In their hidden command centers, Reaper strategists dissected the battle. Cold eyes studied the recordings, analyzing every moment, every fragment of terror that had paralyzed their forces. It wasn't just brute strength they were up against, it was something far more dangerous. The boogeymen had turned fear into a weapon, warping perception, breaking down the very fabric of their enemy's will. But the Reapers would not let emotion dictate their actions. Instead, they sought to neutralize it. They deployed specialized units, each designed to counter the boogeymen's tactics. The first to emerge were their fear-suppressing drones, machines that emitted waves designed to dull emotional responses, blocking out the terror the boogeymen thrived on. Alongside them came the AI soldiers, cold, precise, and unfeeling. These soldiers had no mind to corrupt, no emotions to manipulate. They were programmed with only one objective: eliminate the boogeymen. As the new Reaper forces descended onto the battlefield, their tactics had shifted. No longer did they rely on stealth and intimidation. This was no longer about overwhelming the enemy, it was about survival. The specialized units moved in perfect synchronization, systematically setting up barriers of suppression across the area. The boogeymen could still strike, but their aura of fear was weakened. The AI soldiers advanced with ruthless precision, unaffected by the dread that had previously shattered the Reapers. The clash was brutal. The boogeymen, no longer able to rely solely on fear, attacked with savage force, tearing through the AI soldiers with sheer physical power. But the Reaper's strategy was working, at least for a time. The drones dampened the waves of terror, and the AI soldiers held their ground, firing relentlessly at the boogeymen. For the first time since the conflict had begun, it seemed like the Reapers might have found an answer to humanity's monstrous allies. But the boogeymen were not mere beasts. They had been born from humanity's darkest nightmares, and they learned quickly. The creatures began to adapt, evolving to counter the new Reaper tactics. Where fear once ruled, now reality itself bent to their will. Hallucinations became more than tricks of the mind, they turned physical. What had once been fleeting glimpses of horror now became tangible threats. The very ground beneath the Reapers shifted, warping into grotesque landscapes that trapped their units in impossible mazes. The AI soldiers, though immune to fear, could not process the ever-changing environment. They faltered, their systems overwhelmed by the distortion of space and time around them. The battle became a dance of shifting reality, with the boogeymen using their newfound power to manipulate every aspect of the battlefield. AI units were crushed under collapsing space, or disoriented until they destroyed each other. The fear-suppressing drones, once a key part of the Reaper strategy, became irrelevant in the face of such raw, chaotic power. As the tide turned again, it became clear that even the Reaper's most advanced technology couldn't fully neutralize the boogeymen. The human alliance watched from their stronghold, a mix of awe and dread. The boogeymen were winning, but at a cost. Their power had grown, but so had their instability. The humans could feel it, the creatures were becoming harder to control. The lines between ally and nightmare were beginning to blur. The Reaper's forces lay decimated once more, but the victory was bittersweet. The boogeymen were evolving beyond their creators' expectations, and the humans knew that controlling them would only become more difficult with each passing battle. The battle was over, but victory felt hollow. As the dust settled, the last of the Void Reapers lay scattered in pieces, their advanced technology and brutal efficiency no match for the raw, primal terror the boogeymen had unleashed. Humanity had won, but the air was thick with something more dangerous than triumph. The boogeymen stood in the aftermath, their forms shifting and growing, no longer bound by the desperate ritual that had summoned them. What was once a last-ditch defense now hovered as a looming, uncontrollable threat. Inside the bunker, the remaining scientists watched with mounting dread. They had done it, defeated the Reapers, but the relief was short-lived. The boogeymen had evolved beyond anything they could have anticipated, their very existence feeding off the fear and chaos that had consumed the planet. They no longer seemed to recognize friend from foe, their gaze shifting toward the human survivors. The scientists scrambled, racing to deactivate the Nightmare Protocol. Alarms blared as they frantically typed commands, hoping to shut down the program that had unleashed these nightmares onto the world. But it was too late. The boogeymen, born from the darkest corners of the human mind, were no longer bound by the machines or rituals that had brought them forth. The scientists' efforts to deactivate the protocol failed, the screens flickering before going dark. The boogeymen, now free from any semblance of control, began to move toward the last remaining humans. Their forms twisted, their presence warping the space around them, and the survivors felt a bone-deep terror unlike anything they had experienced before. In the final moments, the last of the Reapers were annihilated, but the boogeymen did not stop. They advanced, their hunger for fear and destruction insatiable. The humans realized, with growing horror, that their greatest weapon had become their greatest threat. The battle had been won, but at what cost? As the boogeymen loomed closer, the lines between savior and destroyer had blurred beyond recognition. The story ends not with triumph, but with uncertainty. Humanity had survived, but in doing so had unleashed something far worse than the Reapers. The boogeymen, now untethered and unstoppable, stood as a new terror on the horizon. The final image is one of looming shadows, a reminder that survival sometimes comes with a price too steep to bear.